Have you ever stopped to think that being a good person can sometimes cause more harm than good? It seems contradictory, doesn't it? But that's exactly what Niccolo Machiavelli observed over 500 years ago, and it still resonates with philosophers, psychologists, and anyone else faced with situations where doing the right thing can have dire consequences. If you clicked on this video hoping to understand this seemingly impossible paradox of kindness, you've come to the right place. Let's dive together into this reflection that could completely change the way you view moral dilemmas in your daily life. And I guarantee that, in the end, you'll leave here with a much more nuanced perspective on what it truly means to be a good person in the complex world we live in. To understand the paradox of kindness, we must first understand who dared to question seemingly absolute truths. Niccolo Machiavelli lived between 1469 and 1527 in Renaissance Italy. Imagine the scene, a period when the Catholic Church held absolute power, where Christian morality dictated all rules of behavior, and where questioning kindness as the supreme virtue was practically heresy. Machiavelli wasn't just an armchair philosopher, he was a diplomat, closely observing the workings of power, seeing empires fall and leaders fail, and it was precisely this practical experience that led him to a disturbing conclusion. Sometimes, to do the greater good, it is necessary to do the lesser evil. When he wrote The Prince, he wasn't trying to be mean or cynical. Instead, he was being brutally realistic about a fundamental question. How can someone in a position of power truly protect and serve his people? And his answer was revolutionary for its time, not always by being nice. Think about it. If you're a family man and a burglar breaks into your home, threatening your wife and children, what's the good course of action? Turn the other cheek, as traditional Christianity preaches, or use whatever force is necessary to protect those you love. Machiavelli would say that true kindness, in this case, would be to protect the innocent, even if it means not being nice to the attacker. This way of thinking shocked the world because it challenged the idea that there are absolute moral rules that apply in all situations. Machiavelli was saying something no one wanted to hear. The world is too complicated for simple answers. Now let's get to the heart of the matter. Machiavelli's paradox of goodness works like this. There's a fundamental difference between being a good person in an individual sense and being responsible for the collective well-being. And sometimes these two things come into direct conflict. Imagine a doctor during a pandemic. He has limited resources, only one ventilator, and 2 patients, a 20-year-old with a good chance of recovery and an 80-year-old man with a much more guarded prognosis. From the standpoint of individual kindness, both deserve the same chance. But from the standpoint of collective responsibility, saving the young man could mean saving someone who will contribute to society for decades to come. This is the kind of dilemma Machiavelli was talking about. It's not about being evil, it's about recognizing that we live in a world of limited resources where we can't always do good for everyone at the same time. Machiavelli observed that overly kind leaders often failed precisely because they were incapable of making difficult decisions. They preferred to be liked rather than effective. And the result? Their people suffered more in the long run. Think of parents who can never say no to their children. On the surface, they're being loving and kind. But what's the result? Children who grow up without boundaries, who don't develop resilience to frustration, who become problematic adults. The true kindness of these parents would be to set clear boundaries, even if it means being the bad guy from time to time. The paradox becomes even clearer when we consider extreme situations. During World War II, Winston Churchill had to make decisions that cost thousands of lives to save millions. He knew of impending attacks, but revealing this information would compromise larger operations. Was this a good or bad decision? Machiavelli would say it was necessary. The genius of Machiavellian thought lies in recognizing that true goodness sometimes requires the courage to be misunderstood, to bear the weight of unpopular decisions, to accept that we cannot always have clean hands when we are truly committed to the greater good. Let's bring this to more concrete, current situations. Have you ever stopped to think about why being a good leader is so difficult? Why do so many well-intentioned people fail when they take on positions of responsibility? Take the example of a school principal who discovers that a teacher well-liked by students is performing terribly. Students love this teacher because he's fun, easy on tests, and always in a good mood. But learning is compromised? What's the good decision? Keep the beloved teacher and jeopardize the education of hundreds of students, or fire him and face an outcry from the school community? Machiavelli would say that true kindness lies in prioritizing student learning, even if it means being seen as the villain. A truly kind principal is one who has the courage to make the unpopular but necessary decision. Another fascinating example occurs in the corporate world. Imagine a CEO who discovers that his company needs to make layoffs to survive a crisis. He has two options: lay off 100 people now to save 500 jobs, or keep everyone and watch the company go bankrupt in 6 months, leaving 600 people unemployed. Which is the good choice? And since we're talking about practical examples, how about liking this video and subscribing to the channel? These reflections are exactly the kind of content I love creating for you, and your participation helps me continue to bring you these insights that can truly change our way of thinking. Returning to the examples, let's talk about a situation we've all experienced: parents who need to raise their children. How many times have you seen parents who, out of love, end up hindering their children's development? They do their homework for their children, lie to protect them from natural consequences, and buy them everything they want so they don't have to be sad. These parents are driven by genuine kindness, but Machiavelli would say they are being cruel without realizing it. True kindness would be letting the child face age-appropriate frustrations, learn from mistakes, and develop resilience. This requires parents to be mean in the short term, to be truly kind in the long term. Even in friendships, we see this paradox. That friend who never confronts you, who always agrees with everything you do, even when you're clearly wrong. Is he being kind? Machiavelli would say no. A truly kind friend is one who has the courage to tell you inconvenient truths, even at the risk of the relationship. What's most fascinating is that modern psychology has confirmed many of Machiavelli's intuitions. Neuroscience studies show that our brains have a natural bias toward decisions that make us feel good in the moment, even when we know they're harmful in the long run. Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman described two systems of thought: System 1, which is fast and emotional, and System 2, which is slow and rational. System 1 pushes us toward easy goodness, the kind that makes us feel good immediately. System 2, on the other hand, is capable of calculating larger consequences and making difficult but necessary decisions. Leadership research has also confirmed Machiavellian observations. Studies show that leaders overly concerned with being liked tend to be less effective than those who balance empathy with firmness. It's no coincidence that many of history's most respected leaders were people who knew how to be unpopular when necessary. Developmental psychology shows us that children raised with clear and consistent limits, even if it means dealing with tantrums and protests, develop better self-esteem and social skills than those raised permissively. Mean parents who say no are actually being kinder than parents who give in to everything. Even the neuroscience of morality reveals something interesting. When we face complex ethical dilemmas, different areas of the brain come into conflict. The emotional area pushes us towards the choice that feels kinder, while the prefrontal cortex calculates broader consequences. People able to integrate these two perspectives tend to make wiser decisions. A particularly revealing study analyzed leaders in crisis situations. Those who managed to save the most lives and minimize harm were precisely those who had the courage to make unpopular decisions at the right time. They endured criticism, misunderstanding, and even temporary hatred to achieve the greater good. Psychology also teaches us about the phenomenon of toxic kindness, when our need to be seen as good prevents us from doing what's truly necessary. It's like the father who can't discipline his child because he can't bear to see them cry, or the boss who won't give honest feedback because he wants to be liked by the team. We've reached the end of a reflection that likely shook some of your beliefs about goodness and morality. And that's exactly what Machiavelli wanted, to make us think beyond easy answers. The paradox of kindness isn't a license to be cruel or insensitive. It's an invitation to a more mature and responsible understanding of what it truly means to do good in the world. Sometimes, true kindness requires the courage to be misunderstood, the wisdom to see beyond the immediate, and the strength to carry the weight of difficult decisions. Machiavelli taught us that living according to rigid principles, without considering context and consequences, can be a subtle form of moral egoism. It's easier to keep our hands clean and our conscience clear than to take responsibility for the actual results of our actions or our inaction. In your life, have you ever encountered situations where you had to choose between being liked and doing what you thought was right? Where you had to be the villain in the story to protect something greater? These experiences, however uncomfortable, are opportunities to exercise the true kindness that Machiavelli described. The world needs people capable of this more complex form of kindness. People who don't shy away from difficult decisions, who can see beyond their own need for approval, who understand that sometimes truly loving means being willing to be temporarily hated. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the Machiavellian paradox is this: true goodness is not about how our actions make us feel, but about the fruits they bear in the world. And sometimes, to reap sweet fruits, we must have the courage to sow bitter seeds. The question remains, in what areas of your life have you avoided necessary decisions for fear of not being seen as a good person? What if true goodness lay precisely in having the courage to make those decisions?